Hi, I'm Bobby Hood. I'm an online tutor for the ACT and SAT. The first question a lot of students and parents ask is, how do I choose whether to take the ACT or the SAT? The answer to this question has changed a bit over recent years, and so it's important to talk about how the tests are similar and, more importantly, how they are different to be able to decide. Of course, it's really going to depend on you, the student, to figure out which test is going to be better. Some students will do better on the ACT, some will do better on the SAT, some will do about the same on both. But there are some things you can think about to make the decision easier up front. So the tests are very similar to each other. For instance, they both have an English grammar, writing, and language section that is virtually identical, so that's not the way to choose. They also both include reading comprehension, and they both include math, and they both include questions where you answer questions about reading graphs and charts to answer questions about the data in them. On the SAT, those questions are scattered throughout the test. On the ACT, they are grouped together in the science separate section. The more important thing is how they are different. And the primary thing to look at in choosing between ACT and SAT is that the ACT is a very time-pressured test. What happens is students often will do really well on the reading comprehension and science passages they get to on the ACT, but then they're suddenly surprised to find out that they've only gotten through half the test and time is already running out. And so the key to the ACT is learning how to deal with that time pressure. The SAT, on the other hand, gives you a lot more time on reading comprehension, but the passages are a lot more dense and difficult to read through and understand. So no matter how well you deal with time pressure, you still may have trouble with SAT dealing with those passages that are written at sort of a college reading level instead of like an 8th grade reading level, which is the level the ACT reading passages are written at. If you can, through looking at test prep books, learning strategies, or working with a tutor, if you can manage the time pressure on the ACT turns out to be an easier test for most students once you've gotten the time pressure dealt with. So that's the most important thing to consider. The other thing that most people focus on is the math sections. That's less important, but still important. The SAT math section has one section that doesn't allow you to use a calculator, which a lot of students really dislike. And the SAT covers a fairly narrow range of math compared to the ACT. The SAT is mostly testing algebra and arithmetic, things that you haven't really studied for a couple of years probably. So if you aren't really good at algebra and arithmetic, you may be in trouble on the SAT. Compare that to the ACT, which covers a much wider range of math and is much less tricky. It's more straightforward than the SAT is. On the ACT, there is more likely to be math that you learned in the last year because it covers algebra, it covers geometry, it has some trigonometry, it has a wider variety of things. And while it may include a question or like one question about matrices or logarithms that you may not be familiar with, that's just one question. And it may be that you are familiar with that and those questions are easy. So that's the second thing to look at. When you put those two things together, the math and reading comprehension, that probably will give you a pretty good idea of which test you ought to focus on. Of course, the best way to find out which test is going to be better for you is to actually take a practice SAT and a practice ACT at home and see how you do in comparison on the two tests. That will also give you an idea. Of course, I am happy to provide a free practice test for the SAT and ACT for you to take at home. All you need to do is contact me and I'll be happy to send one to you. Again, my name is Bobby Hood and you can contact me on my website, bobbyhoodonlinetutoring.com.